Welcome back to the Hospice Intelligence channel. I'm Dr. Brian Haas, National Medical Director and founder of Hospice Intelligence. If you're watching this, you probably just finished another shift where you squeezed patient visits between mountains of documentation. You know that sinking feeling when you realize you may have missed capturing those LCD criteria that Medicare demand. Yeah, I've been there too. I built Hospice Intelligence because I saw my own clinical teams drowning in the same documentation struggles you face every day. This channel is where we tackle Medicare's endless maze together. I'm here to show you how to capture 2 to 3 more LCD criteria without adding hours to your day, because your time belongs with patients, not buried in paperwork. Let's make compliance work for you, not against you. So here's what most hospice leaders don't realize. The average cost of responding to a Medicare audit isn't just the potential recoupment. It's the 200 plus staff hours spent pulling charts, the delayed admissions, the stressed clinical team, and still 47% of renal disease claims get denied anyway. There is a better way. Medicare auditors have a target on renal disease cases. Why? Because the documentation requirements are incredibly specific and incredibly easy to miss. You need documented lab values, specific creatinine levels, clearance rates. You need uremic symptoms described in detail. You need evidence the patient declined dialysis and understood what that means. But here's what actually happens. Your nurse admits a renal patient on Friday afternoon. She's already done 4 admissions this week. She documents end-stage renal disease, patient declining dialysis. Well, seems sufficient, right? Wrong. No lab values, no specific symptoms, no date when dialysis stopped, no functional decline noted. 6 months later, claim denied, recoupment demanded, and your nurse doesn't even remember this patient. Let's talk about the 6 documentation pitfalls that trigger Medicare audits for a renal disease patient. Error number 1, the ghost lab values. Your chart says elevated creatinine. But elevated compared to what? What's the actual number? When was it drawn? Medicare's LCD requires creatinine levels greater than 8 or 6 for diabetics, and GFR or creatinine clearance less than 10 mLs per minute. If those numbers aren't in your documentation, you have no case. Error number 2, the stable patient paradox. Week after week, your nurses document. Patient stable, no complaints, vitals within normal limits. Well, sounds good, right? Except auditors read this and think, if the patient is stable, why are they on hospice? What's missing? Well, the context. The patient appears stable today, though continues terminal decline from renal failure with progressive fatigue, decreased oral intake over the past month, and increasing somnolence indicating uremic encephalopathy. Much better. Error number 3. The symptom silence. Renal failure causes specific, miserable symptoms: uncontrolled itching, constant nausea, mental confusion, restless legs that won't let patients sleep. But if you don't document them, auditors assume they don't exist. Error number 4, the Dialysis Disappearing Act. Patients stop dialysis. That's all your chart says. When? Why? Did the family understand this decision? What was the nephrologist's recommendation? Auditors want the whole story, not just the headline. Error number 5, the function freeze. Your admission assessment documents the patient needs help with 3 ADLs. Well, perfect, but 3 months later, your visit notes never mention function again. No documentation of further decline, no evidence of disease progression. That becomes a red flag for auditors. Error number 6, the lone diagnosis. Your patient has diabetes-related end-stage renal disease, CHF, peripheral vascular disease, and chronic wounds. But your documentation focuses only on the kidneys. You're missing the opportunity to show the cumulative burden of multiple failing organ systems. Any one of these errors can trigger a denial. Most charts have 3 or 4. So here's the question. How do you expect your nurses to remember every LCD requirement for every diagnosis during every visit? You don't. That's not how human memory works, especially when you're managing 13 patients and just got called about a crisis admission. This is where hospice intelligence changes everything. Imagine your nurse is documenting a visit with Mrs. Johnson, your renal patient. She types, "Patient reports feeling weak and tired. Kidney disease continues." Before she can finalize the note, the system says, "Hold on, I noticed you haven't documented recent creatinine levels. LCD requires specific labs. Also, have you addressed uremic symptoms? Let's make sure this note is audit ready." The nurse is then able to add per labs from 11.3, creatinine is 8.4, creatinine clearance of 8 cc's per minute. Patient reports worsening pruritus despite treatment, decreased appetite with intake less than 50%, and increasing confusion per family consistent with uremic encephalopathy. Now the note tells the complete story. Now it's defensible. Now it meets LCD requirements. So let's talk about compliance. We have the traditional approach. We discover the problem 6 months later during an audit. We scramble to recreate the clinical picture. We often fail. Hospice Intelligence's approach: catch the problem while the nurse is still at the keyboard. Fix it in real time. Protect the claim before it's ever submitted. The same principle applies to every hospice diagnosis, whether it's congestive heart failure. The system knows you need ejection fraction documented. COPD, it checks for FEV1 values and oxygen requirements or resting tachycardia. ALS, it verifies you've documented speech, swallowing, and respiratory status. And it's not just individual notes. Hospice Intelligence gives your leadership team visibility into compliance across your entire organization. Which diagnoses have the most documentation gaps? Which nurses need additional education? Where's your risk? Agencies using Hospice Intelligence report on average that their nursing staff is able to reduce the amount of time it takes them to write an admission note or a recertification note by up to 66%. In addition, they're capturing at least 2 to 3 additional LCD criteria per every note. In claim denials, this is the big one. The nurses actually appreciate the guidance. Nobody wants to get an audit letter about a chart they completed 6 months ago. So here's where you're right now. You have 2 choices. One choice, keep doing what you're doing. Hope your nurses remember everything. Find out about problems when the auditor does. Spend hundreds of hours responding to ADRs. Watch your claims get denied. Explain to your board why you're refunding $180,000 to Medicare. Or, choice number 2, build compliance into your workflow. Give your nurses real-time guidance. Catch problems before notes are finalized. Submit clean claims and sleep better at night. When the audit letter comes, and it will come, you'll open it with confidence instead of dread because you already know every chart meets LCD standards. Hospice Intelligence isn't just another software system. It's your agency's protection against the Medicare audit machine. Real-time compliance checking, diagnosis-specific guidance, documentation education at the point of care. Don't wait until you get the audit letter. Schedule a demonstration today and see how Hospice Intelligence can transform your documentation from audit vulnerable to audit ready. Look, Medicare isn't getting any easier on us, but you don't have to face this alone. I created Hospice Intelligence because I witnessed firsthand how the documentation burden was stealing precious time from patient care. If what we covered today resonated with you, if you're tired of wondering whether you've documented enough, then it's time to talk to your leadership about the tool I built specifically for this problem. Share this video with your fellow nurses who are struggling with the same documentation burden. And if you're ready to stop playing Medicare's guessing game, have your clinical director or administrator reach out to us. Because at the end of the day, we all got into hospice for the same reason: to care for families in their most vulnerable moments. Let's make sure documentation supports that mission instead of stealing from it. Subscribe for more strategies that put patient care first. Until next time, keep being the compassionate voice your patient needs. Visit hospiceintelligence.com or call us today because the best time to prepare for an audit is before you get the letter. Hospice Intelligence. Compliance built in, confidence built up.